Okay. So today I'm going to cover section 17.1 for Biology 10. The title of this chapter is Darwin's Theory of Evolution. And whenever I mention the word evolution, people get a little squirmish, because there's a lot of controversy or critics, or I don't know how else you want to describe it, whenever we get to the topic of evolution. And all I really want to say is that evolution is change over time. You've seen this picture or some form of it where you have this monkey and then you have a bunch of like different forms that are in between, and that's where we came from, monkeys. No, that is not what evolution is. That's not what it looks like. That's not what it is. It's nothing like that at all. That is a misconception out there. It's not like that. Okay? This is what evolution really is. Okay? Branches of different species, going off on their own sub-splitting. Some become extinct. Some are still there. It's a very messy, I don't want to say messy, but a very tree-like, bush-like diagram. It's not linear. It's not gradual. It can happen very rapidly. It can happen very slowly. And so I'm hoping that I can clarify and identify any concerns or misconceptions with it. All I'm going to talk about in this chapter really is about Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, how it's driven, the ideas that influenced his theory, and then look at the evidence of evolution. And you can kind of decide for yourself, okay? I'm not going to force this down your throat, but I'm just going to teach it, and that's all. I'm just going to leave it at that. So the first section is A Voyage of Discovery. The objectives: identify his contribution to science, and then look at 3 patterns of biodiversity that Darwin noticed on his voyage on the HMS Beagle. So back in 1831, okay, Charles Darwin was a very young lad. He didn't really know what he wanted to do with his life. In fact, his father complained, and I swear, like there are quotes in your book that say, "You care for nothing but shooting, dogs, and rat catching, and you will be a disgrace to yourself and all your family." Pretty harsh words from your father, basically telling you that you're not really going to amount to anything. But Darwin got his chance as a young lad when his best friend, who was a captain of the HMS Beagle, was going to go on a 5-year voyage around the world to map coastlines and harbors. And he's like, "Hey, do you want to be my companion? Like, keep me company?" Not in that way, but intellectually, because, I would really appreciate talking to someone that's somewhat smart, or that just questions everything. And so on Darwin's voyage, he kind of took it upon himself to be this unofficial naturalist, read a lot of geology and biology books, and the books that he read suggested that Earth was ancient and that life had changed through time, and that's what evolution is. Life changes over time. So a picture of the HMS Beagle and their voyage around the world. Now, Darwin's contribution to science is that he developed a theory. So I want to talk about what the word theory is because, again, that's another word that's misused. In science, theory is basically fact. It's well established. There's tons of explanations for what you see. It's backed up by evidence. It is not, in theory, it's not hypothetical at all. It's fact, okay? So his theory of biological evolution did offer an explanation for the unity as well as the diversity of life that we see. He, in his journals, this is literally a page taken from his journal. It's been scanned. He puts, "I think," and he doesn't even finish his thought. He just draws this picture. And you can see all these branches coming off in B, C, D to represent maybe different species, but you can see that they're very diverse. But at the same time, they are unified. Maybe at one point they did share a common ancestor. So it proposes how modern organisms we see today did evolve through descend, I should say, this should be descend, from common ancestors. Now this is a picture of Charles Darwin when he was older. He's not the greatest looking guy, but he did contribute a whole lot to science. So I need you to look at these 3 pictures. Okay, over here I have an ostrich. This is an emu, and this is a rhea from South America. And just notice some similarities between these 3 types of species. Hopefully you're thinking, okay, they're birds, they got beaks, they have feathers, they got these gigantic legs, Maybe you know that the ostrich doesn't fly, so maybe you're assuming the other organisms don't fly. So these three species have a lot of similarities, but they're not found in the same region. Ostriches are from, you find them in Africa. Emus, Australia. And these guys, South America. If you want to see a close-up picture of what they look like. Yeah. So 3 big observations that Darwin noticed on his voyage. So I labeled it A through C here. Number 1, species vary globally. So he was looking at these birds from South America, Africa, and Australia. And he's like, wow, they all have a lot of similarities, but they live in different locations. Okay. Rabbits are found in grasslands of Europe, but I don't find them in South America or Australia. Why is that? Why is it you only find kangaroos in Australia? So you notice that different, yet ecologically similar species inhabited, separated, but similar habitats around the globe. So he's like, oh, this is interesting. Second, I'm going to talk about one more example here. The book doesn't mention this. It makes me kind of sad. Toxic frogs, okay? You find them in rainforests in South America and Africa, and they're very similar, brightly colored to warn, predators, hey, don't eat me, I could kill you. So again, if I had to add an example to this, I would say poisonous frogs. Okay, species vary locally. So he was looking at the rheas in South America, looking at them closely, and he noticed that there's 2 species. I think one is actually named after Darwin. The other one's called the greater rhea. One's grassland. One lives in a colder, harsher grassland. Okay, so they're the same type of organisms, but maybe they prefer different locations. There's 2 different species of these organisms. Galapagos Islands. They have these giant tortoises that live there, and some have extremely long necks and some have short necks. And so he started to look at that. Hey, these are large tortoises. Why does one have a long neck, one has a short neck? He noticed these birds. He called them mockingbirds at the time. He didn't know they were finches, and how their beak sizes varied from one another. So, in conclusion, he noticed that different, yet related species occupy different habitats within a local area. So this slide shows you the 2 rheas in South America. You can see one is adapted to a harsher grassland climate or area, and this one's more lush. This picture is the short neck, and you can see that he's jumping on some grass that's pretty low to the ground. And this is the long neck tortoise, so probably lives in or eats vegetation that's a little bit higher off the ground. Here are Darwin's mockingbirds, in quotation, mockingbirds, but you can see that the beak sizes do vary. Third observation is that species vary over time. So he found this fossil of a glyptodon, which is here, and he's like, well, it kind of looks like a modern armadillo. Now these guys were like 3 meters in size. This is actually really, really big. These guys are like maybe half a meter. So you notice the fossil record included extinct animals that were similar to, yet a little bit different from the living species. So he's making down all these observations, writing them down in his notebook, and he's just kind of thinking about them. So Darwin, when he got back to England, like I said, he took it upon himself to be this unofficial naturalist. He was collecting fossils, he was collecting organisms, and when he got home, he sent them off to experts for identification. And the experts were like, hey, Darwin, these aren't mockingbirds, they're actually finches. And Darwin's like, what? Some of them are like the same species and some of them are not, but their beak sizes do vary, and they do resemble a single common finch species that's found in South America. So to go back to his journal page, how he was kind of mapping things out with the tree right here, okay? And then if we go to back to our diagram, see here it's branching off. So Darwin, when he got home, he didn't rush to publish his ideas right away. In fact, he spent a lot of time collecting even more evidence. And he actually kind of wrote like this book, and he didn't publish it, didn't do anything with it for 20 years. He just kept filling notebooks and ideas about species and how species can change over time. And the next section I'll talk about why he waited. He was actually conflicted about it. But again, I mean, could you just imagine just sitting on this information for 20 years before really kind of revealing it to the world that species can change over time? Okay, so that concludes 17.1 lecture. Darwin and his contribution to science. Hey, he developed this theory of evolution, how organisms can change over time, and then the 3 observations, A through C.